So yes, thank you so much for being here after what has been an incredible journey. We've been to so many places across these 48 hours, and we've been taken to so many topics and had such wonderful meals and have met old friends and have been re-energized by all the wonderful people that have given us this generous opportunity to share knowledge and to share experiences. So even before we begin, I think you all deserve a good hand of applause. Yeah. And this is the closing session. All went by so quickly. And this carousel ride took us to multiple geographies. Geographies in this world which has all these continents that have come together here in Qatar. Geographies of knowledge, geographies of perspectives, of understandings and misunderstandings. And that which I believe really happened here during these 2 days was the creation of a space for dialogue. And I would love this last session to be yet another moment for an open discussion. Before we begin, I'd like to give you a few figures. So, 24 hours, 48, not even 48 hours, and we've had 3 keynote moments, the opening session, this morning's session, and now this one, with 5 amazing speakers who have ignited our mind and our emotions and have contributed to our discussions across the 2 days. We've had 6 parallel sessions with 23 different speakers, and across these days I heard people saying, but I wanted to hear something else. I was in this room, but I missed something else. I was speaking and I wanted to be somewhere else. So it shows that a lot really happened. 2 workshops, 1 seminar, close to 200 attendees in-house, and over 400 attendees online. So I am very happy to congratulate you all for what is indeed a very expressive number of engagement during our conference. Still trying to summarize what happened, which is almost impossible. I would say we could think of 3 elements: inter, multi, trans, and re. So we did a lot of intersectionality here, interdisciplinarity. Of course, we were talking about interlingual and, of course, interlingual translation at times. But mostly we were talking about intersemiotic translation, intersensory translation, and we were taken to a lot of interspaces as we were discussing these elements. Just as the inter was part of all this, so was the multi, because arriving at an inter means going through multis of different types. And again, multidisciplinarity will be the big word that has characterized what has happened in this venue. And I would say the richness of our experience comes from this multidisciplinarity, the richness of this dialogue. When it comes to translation, well, the trans was of course translation, but we went through trans-adaptation, transfiguration, trans-creation, and the bottom line is creation. It's just this beautiful element which makes us human. And that's yet another topic I would like to highlight in this conference. We had a feeling of humanity. We had a feeling of friends coming together to share ideas, and as we were doing so, we were addressing topics that are very close to our hearts. A lot of storytelling happened, a lot of narrativization of lives around us. A lot about voicing what is silent. We were talking about music, film, poetry, museums, marketing, architecture, picture books, metaverse, memescapes, philosophy, media, sports, literature, linguistics, feminism, culture, conflict, activism, politics, ethics. What didn't we talk about over these 24, 48 hours? So again, congratulations to you all, and thank you for sharing all you have done and for teaching us so much. So, let's move on to closing all of this, which I believe is the beginning of something else. And because we weren't able to attend all the sessions, I would like to ask my three companions, distinguished guests sitting with me here, in 5 minutes, could each of you please summarize what struck you the most during these 2 days? What are you taking home with you as absolutely, wow, I've learned something. I've been ignited. So, who would like to start?
Well, just what comes to my mind. And as you were speaking, really, flashes came to my mind of all the things that we have heard in those conversations that we have had during this conference. And I think that the main idea that I get is that we are some sort of a point of inflection, I would say, or some sort of turning point for everything, and that there is a need. You mentioned humanity, and you mentioned a lot of different fields, different disciplines, but really translation is in all of them, or the act that we say that is the transmission of content from one context into another, and the transformation that it does, I think nowadays is more important than ever, because we have there a need in a world that is rife with conflict, in which some people always are trying to control the rest of the people and try to guide the communications towards their interests. And I think that a need for engagement, for our academic engagement, I think is the main idea that I personally got from all the interventions in this conference. I think there is a responsibility for academia to be there and to contribute, to be prepared to what is happening in the world now with the advent of artificial intelligence, machine translation, and everything. So that's the main idea that I get. That all those, let's say, theories or perspectives about translation and conflict that we started to think in a sociological way, shifting towards sociology, now they have become evident and absolutely necessary for the world.
Mm-hmm.
That would
Thank
be
you
the
very
idea.
I'm getting this vibe of the activist researcher, the researcher that engages actively in society,
Yes.
contributing towards change.
The translation zone of engagement, let's say, at all levels.
Wonderful. Could I ask you, please, to add your views.
Yeah, I guess. What? Yeah. I keep getting this image in my head of a wheel with lots and lots of spokes, and that the impression that I have of these 2 days is the kind of the energy and the richness that is coming out of a place where there's been a selection of people coming here to talk about various areas of the discipline and issues of translation from different parts of the world. And somehow it's as if a universe has been gathered here. There was the marvelous thing of actually watching a film and then discussing it. There were the presentations on jokes and on memes and on songs. There were the very sort of activist scholarly work here, for example. I mean, just so much that is aware of the future, as in all the talk about artificial intelligence and of how, what are the strategies, what are the dangers, what's going to happen. And at the same time, we're dealing with the old stuff. And at the same time, every talk that I attended, every event was kind of opening a door into something new. Everything was proposing ideas, proposing ways forward, and opening doors into areas that were rich and worthy of following into. So, and this was all in like a very kind of cool spirit of comradeliness and friendship. So it's, I think this has been really one of, the absolutely nicest and best academic conferences I've attended. And I'm very, very glad to have been here.
Thank you very much. Clearly, humanity comes up again, this being human while being an academic. And I think we found that a number of times across these 2 years, because academics are supposed to be prim and proper and above all boring. And none of the three happened here. We had very exciting conversations in a very leisurely manner. Yeah. We have a man of the media here.
Yeah. I can't count myself as an academic, although I started off as an academic, but I'm a practitioner more than an academic.
An academic who is very much in the spot and in the real world today.
Sure.
And we know that you are an academic, that you are interested in translation, but I'm sure that you looked at us from another angle.
Absolutely.
And could you give us your impressions, please?
Thank you. The main thing for me that would attracted me from the very first moment is the choice of the title, the word creativity, this element, which has been very much stressed throughout all the sessions I managed to attend. That was something that means a lot. We've just mentioned in your introduction the idea of creation versus just the literal translation. So it's about our ability to use the creativity, the gift from God, that makes the difference between a human being and anyone else, between the human being and the robot with the AI, to make sense about everything. So the one thing that really I would say was very fascinating to me was the stress of this element into most of the sessions, if not all of them. I couldn't, of course, attend everything, but even until the very last session I attended, which was part of it was talking about untranslatable, but the whole discussion that I was enjoying listening to is about how to be creative and how to use the endless limits of the human mind to work around it and make solutions for this. So I think this was one of the very main factors that I really enjoyed throughout this conference. because I'm more on the practitioner side, I was very much interested in finding out. I did enjoy very much the intellectual debates, the intellectual discussions about the theory, the origins of certain, trends and certain streams in the way that translation has developed over years. But on the other side, I was always looking for, so what's next and how we can make use of what we're talking about. And this is something I did really enjoy, and I think it's one of the main merits of this gathering.
Thank you. We've been teased twice here. AI, what next? Let's pause there for a little while. And I would ask if we could have light in the room, if you do not mind. Because the feeling I have is we still have a lot of questions to ask. And we didn't get the time or the chance to ask each other or to comment on some of our questions, lines for future thought. And I'd like to move on to you. The stage is no longer here. The stage is with you.
Yay.
What questions do you still have? What do you want to ask each other before we leave? What do you want to comment? What did you learn? And as I always ask my students at the end of every class, what are you taking home with you today? So if we could have lights in the room and a microphone, we want to invert. And my question to you is, where do we start? Yes, please. Kindly identify yourselves so that we get a better understanding of where you're coming from.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. Let me first express my thanks to everybody here.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay,
thank
good.
you.
Okay. Let me first express my thanks to everybody here and the contribution to our field translation studies. I'd like to make a quick comment. Let me introduce myself first. Dr. I'm a graduate of translation studies, a practicing interpreter, currently an international cooperation expert for the government of Qatar. I've been attending this event concomitantly with another event that was taking place in the Sheraton, which is the Global Security Forum. That event was attended by more than 20 ambassadors and representatives from Google, Twitter, Facebook, who were discussing security. And at one point, they were talking about combating extremist narratives and disinformation. And the discussion went on and on and on. And from my seat, I was just wondering, what if those people knew what these people knew? The discussion would have changed it completely. And trust me, if they applied and what we know as translation scholars, our world would be much, much safer. So as much as I would blame them for not reaching out to us, I think we should also take responsibility for not reaching out to them and inform them about what we know, to make an impact about what we know. Let me express my thanks to you again for this opportunity, and I enjoyed every moment being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I request you to keep your mic, if you don't mind? How can we reach out to them?
By probably being present and in the middle of the session, just probably stand and tell them, discussion is not only in English. Narratives don't only circulate in English. And talk to those decision makers during coffee shops, during coffee breaks, and tell them that you have platforms with billions of users, and those users don't use these platforms in English only. They use them in other languages. Being limited to English would not do much justice to the world. This recognition and this awareness, when translated by decision makers, by their strategists, would have an impact on the world instead of, which is good too, having our knowledge and theory published in our circles. So building that bridge, we claim to build bridges between languages, but it would be also great to keep building bridges between our field and their field, a practicing field.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The practicing field not of fellow translators, but we are talking about legislators, we are talking about
security experts.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to add anything to this conversation?
Well, what I'm going to say will be very negative, I'm afraid.
That's fine.
Well, I mean, I think you're being amazing, and you're being very kind and very positive. I think that the people who work in security have no interest in guaranteeing safety or arriving at safety. I think their job is to keep everything going so that they continue to have their jobs. And I think that I would want to be extremely careful before I impart any kind of information to them, that I wasn't going to be instrumentalized in actually, avoiding safety a bit more.
I couldn't agree more. However, I just have a quick comment. If this was said in their circles, it would make a difference.
Yeah, maybe it would actually, to a few. You're right. It'd be a long job.
I would look at it from a different perspective. I very much agree with Dr. Ahdaf, but I would see it from a different perspective, again, from a practitioner perspective. I know how much decision makers, high-profile officials, are not very much, although they are very much interested in reaching out and influencing as many, but they're not very much aware or skilled to know how to do it. So yes, this kind of channel communication to tell them how to do it, again, taking into consideration this security, I would say, disclaimer, but it's very much interesting to thank you for bringing this up in the discussion.
Absolutely. And probably one thing to be more practical, I'm going to finish. This event, the Global Security Forum, will take place again next year.
Yeah.
And I would love to see a session there highlighting the role of language and translation. I know you'll be here. You can reach out to me. I know the people organizing. I will ensure if you have quality, of course you do, we will ensure a session there that will tackle the role of translation and language in security.
Can I say something at the end?
Please.
I think, I mean, not that it's up to me in any form at all, Yani, since I'm only a visitor here for 2 days, but what I would do is that I would invite them, or I would invite some of them, I would invite key players, or I would invite people that I thought were open-minded, or the whole lot of them, or something, to a couple of sessions here. And I would make sure what these sessions were, and who was speaking, and what they looked like, and what they talked about. But I would host them here so they could see the whole thing, see, like, the multiplicity, etc., but attend a couple of very pertinent sessions. Give them lunch, and goodbye.
Very important element.
Yeah, truly. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Just as a follow-up to what my colleague just mentioned now, we're always talking about the impact. And we academics, sometimes I feel that we are living in a different or separate, or we are isolating ourselves in a different world. The question now, how many people around us know about what we're doing?
Sure.
I'm not talking about only the
Absolutely, he's
institutions or
right.
government. I'm talking even about the society we are living in. The people around us. I mean, they just know that we are lecturers, we are professors at universities, but they don't know what exactly we are doing, what we are working on, what's the impact that we're making in our society around us. The point here is we're focusing a lot in academia about publications, and we publish, and that's part of our job, I know that. But to what extent we reach out to the, let's say, the decision makers. I still remember about the COVID-19, when COVID-19 happened, and we know, Qatar, we are a very super diverse country here. Many people coming from different countries, speaking more than 10 languages. Even, I think it's more, according to some statistics, and I mentioned some of that in my latest paper, actually. More than half the population here speaking languages other than Arabic. and they're speaking like more than 10 languages here. What we're doing as academics to them, I mean, in terms of delivering the information, the content about COVID-19, and how it was hard really, I mean, especially we have the law here, which protects Arabic, and it's very strict law in Qatar. And to what extent do we as academics work with the decision makers in the country, and to show that, look, we are translators, not only academics, and we have these kinds of strategies, these kinds of policies, we can introduce it and help you with the policies, because there's no even policy here for translation, to my knowledge, in the country. They have a law to protect Arabic. Arabic is the option language, but there's nothing like a policy about reaching out to the people who don't speak Arabic, the official language of the country. And that was really a hindrance here, I mean, when it comes to COVID-19, because of the hazards and the risks that can affect people here. And we had to use like even local scholars, local speakers, I mean, the religious speakers or khutaba in the mosque, I mean, just to let people know about COVID-19 and what precautionary, I mean, measures they have to use. Because there was no like a policy, very clear policy. We can help as academics, but because we isolate ourselves, some sort of like isolating ourselves in our papers, departments, universities, there's no impact. And probably, I mean, that what I know it's not easy really to find a way to reach out to those people or the decision makers, because it's difficult to tell everybody, look, we are here, academics. But there should be a way in like workshops, seminars, and not to academics, but outside in society. Probably that will help. But
we are talking about creativity here, so
we need to be creative. I like the movie they made today, I mean, Julia and Rana, really. I mean, it was like a kind of disseminating knowledge through a movie, let's say. That's one example. A workshop that we do. I mean, even in malls sometimes we can make some kind of meetings there. I mean, in cultural centers, we have to be creative in that, not only in publishing, but also how to reach out to the society.
thank you very much. Here we have a call for action, and we have another hand raised in the center. I'm sorry, we cannot see faces. I can only
Because
see
the lights are just
there we go. Apologies. It is so interesting how, and we will move forward in a little moment. Thank you.
Hello, hi. My name is Waleed Al-Assar. My background is in computer science, physics, technology. And I then went into content like technical writing and technical translation, especially for focusing on information technology. First, two points. First, I want to assure our colleagues here that the most advanced technologies used in translation, in all aspects of translation, in many languages and accents, is with the intelligent agencies. They are more advanced than us in these, and I can assure you that there are companies, research units in certain companies working on this for the intelligent community. So they are much more advanced, and they know exactly what we are talking about more than us to deliver.
So you are saying they do not need us?
Exactly. And what they do.
well, they don't want us, certainly.
What they do, they monitor who will benefit them more than others. Okay? So they can pinpoint and they can look around and then, okay, we need you because you need some information or some ideas and creative ideas that will help us. So this is covered already. I'm sorry to say that. And what we are using to give the tools sometimes is byproducts from their research. Sometimes we are using tools that already tested and done and created by them.
Yeah, like the whole internet, basically.
That they are already, it is now we can commercialize it and share it with people. The second point that I want to highlight is talking about technology and artificial intelligence, which was mentioned a lot here. To tell you the truth, I was like, I wish that, oops, I should not have that. Should be silent.
Whoops.
That's not a robot, yeah?
Somebody's telling you what to say.
That's right, yeah. You're
monitored.
you're getting the phone call.
See you later, guys. I thought last week you were anyway. So the other thing, I mean, guys, in HPK, very talented, advanced people who can work about information technology, and especially about artificial intelligence and the machine translation, all of these things. And I'm not talking about just the machine translation that we used to know about, and maybe many conferences ago we were talking about. Now we are talking about the recent trends in that. And to the truth, I wish that one of the panel speakers should be one of those guys. We need to know exactly what are the latest trends, what we should prepare ourselves as translators or interpreters for the future. I mean, I think most of you may have tried ChatGPT. Or the new, of course, it's not the only tool. There's one big AI, there's Google Brad that's coming soon, and so on. There are a lot of those tools. I mean, tens now of those tools. I mean, if we now did, we should from now start to get used to this tool, and I can assure that it will not replace easily the translator or the interpreter. Why? Because those tools are tools. We feed them, and they will get back to us with the information. Now, they are, between brackets, some more intelligent in ways, but it is not intelligent. It is like, what can I say? I mean, it depends on what they call the parameters that you train those systems on, and the way that you ask your question to them. So, if you use human intelligence to ask them the right questions, we will get the right answers from the artificial intelligence. And as I mentioned before today, that they will not replace us. Who will replace me is somebody who can use artificial intelligence better than I do. So this is a very important thing. The designers think that Photoshop will replace them. But what happened? The talented designer who used Photoshop in a better way was able to replace that guy. As this is a simple example. Thank you, Ahdaf.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that you said something great importance here, and it's the use. So those are tools, okay, but they are used for something, for purposes. What are they used for? Precisely today in the BBC, there's an article by Anthony Serka about this kind of a point at which we are and the prospects of the future in artificial intelligence. Not dealing with translation, but translation is just one aspect of a whole revolution in the whole world. One of the points that this article said is that it is absolutely now a fact that machines have achieved creativity. Now, this creativity, how is it going to be applied? Is it going to be applied for the good or for the bad, for bad purposes?
It's already used for both.
For both, yes, of course. Yes, of course. But the author of the article, quoting somebody else, said that, well, the chances are that the good uses of this technology will be just at 20%, and 80% will be applied to bad uses. And the very fact that in the parallel and sister conference here, they are dealing with the problem of security is because security is very, very, very important to the uses that we apply this technology for. And the fact that we have been studying about how, let's say, ideologies, for example, influence people, and how ideologies are constructed, and how ideologies annul or govern or, let's say, accept power over people. I mean, from the academic perspective, there is something that really the security aspect or the other aspects which have to do more with technology should be aware of. And if you see at the prospect of jobs for the future, yes, of course, now content providers, machine learning engineering, I just look for what are the characteristics of new jobs related to data with language And with the technology that we have now here, so data technology engineering like yours, obviously it's demanding, but for what uses? Who are the recipients? The recipients will put this into social uses, and then they need the social perspective, because if not, the uses will be really askew. There was another piece of news today. Now I read that in Spanish, but it said that Microsoft had fired their whole team of ethic thinkers in the development of artificial intelligence. Ethics. Why?
No, the issue is, sorry, but they fired a group of them.
A group of them.
Teams in each department of Microsoft. So the issue that they are focusing in certain areas to kill. Was like an explanation by one.
Okay. But that's that's a linguistic strategy.
Sorry?
Or that's a linguistic strategy, and that's a strategy of selecting some information and leaving the others. And that is something that we very well know about that.
Yeah.
How can you construct a piece of news with one meaning that probably differs from the actual from the fact? So how to put that into good use? There is when data, technologies, but also humanities directed to that, we have a lot to say, and the world should take heed of this.
Thank you.
May I add something?
Yes, please.
Again, another interesting point for me. In the world of the digital media, there has been a lot of endeavors to make use of how far we can make use of the artificial intelligence, particularly ChatGPT. And by the way, ChatGPT is generations. So the generation that we have now, it's quite backward, kind of. So I think the generation that named 3.0, which is coming, you probably know better.
Tonight, I think they will announce, tonight, will announce the fourth generation.
Yeah, which will be much more intelligent, much more capable of doing things that is beyond imagination. I very much agree with you that we should be at one step ahead always. We try as humans to take advantage and make use of these tools, but it will be a very challenging point. I did personally, within the experiments we are doing in the content creation, I did ask ChatGPT, the older version, and by the way, the ChatGPT I think available on a free basis is only updated until 2021. So if you ask them anything behind that, they'll say, I don't know. However, I did ask the question to the ChatGPT, to the robot, can you replace me as a content creator? And the answer was in 3-4 pages, going around and around. The conclusion was, you shouldn't be worried. It's not. So, no, I'm worried. Yeah, so I'm just saying we do need to do a lot to be a step ahead of the artificial intelligence. It's much more smarter.
May move away from the fear of this big monster called AI and come back to our conference. We have 4 ladies with their hands up. Shall we come forward first? Ah, fine, okay. I'm sorry. Somebody took the mic at the back.
Hello everyone. I'm Fatin Ashur. I got my main degree in translation studies from the TII in 2020. To be honest, the point that I'd like to raise is something about the translators' rights. Mashallah, these conferences are like tackling issues related to creativity, technologies, and so different topics and different like professional topics actually. But one of the things that really shocked me during the World Cup, they were I used to work like for 3 months with volunteered actually with the Q&A. They were looking for translators. But the thing that really shocked me that the translators are not even eligible for obtaining their driving license in some communities, and we are unfortunately one of them. So I don't know why they are like just having that type of perspective on translators, that they don't need to have like their driving license. And alhamdulillah, I got my driving license 10 years ago, and I'm driving before I got my just raise it or shed the light on in such upcoming conferences.
Thank you for proposing the topic. We are taking a note of it, absolutely.
I just have a question in return. Is there or can you set up a union in Qatar?
Yes.
So there's a translators union? No. Well, that's what you should do. The the union. Oh, you can't? Okay, because basically it's unions and syndicates that look after these. Qataris can. But non-Qataris could join, be affiliate members. Try, wallahi. Yeah.
Even if there is not a law, we can get
Yeah.
then we get to
People will have to use translation to get out of jail.
Sorry, I'm speaking for the second time, just because she raised a very important question here. There are so many practicing translators here, but I do really believe that in a country like this that attaches high importance to the use of language, I think if a regulation of the profession would raise the quality of the translation to a very high level, especially because there are leading institutions such as Al Jazeera that provide great content and great favor to Arabic. So I second the same opinion, and I highly support unionizing translations or translation and having criteria that would certify the practicing translators in the field, so that we can raise the level of the profession to the internet, which exists, by the way. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we come forward to the lady in white?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Samar Shishakli from Ministry of Culture here in Doha. I work as a translator and project manager. As for my question, since you believe that Renaissance always, I don't know if all believe in that, Renaissance begins with translation. And the movement of translation is still growing. As for the Arab world in general, there is nothing serious. And although there are efforts here and there, but I think that it is still not enough. Personally, I was called to come to Qatar as there is an ambitious project for translation and an intellectual translation. And yes, people around me are so ambitious about that. But it is not enough, because up till now, we are not doing something highly serious according for such such name, intellectual project of translation. So how and what such conferences might do for this purpose, that to make it or to stir what is static, or to raise ideas, or to raise emotion, to raise ambition, real ambition about such a project, which is going to create a real renaissance. I thank you also at the end. Thank you for such opportunity you give us, because really you stir the static emotions inside us. You make us live such ugly. So again, thank you for all of you.
Thank you. If I may, could you just keep your microphone just a little while longer? Theoretically, this is an academic setting, and we are fortunate enough to have in the room, and we've heard the voices of professionals, and we are grateful that professionals have taken time from their work to be here with us. I now have something to ask back from professionals. When will professionals come together to set up a conference about the profession, rather than this academic setting having a setting that is stirred and moved and oriented and energized by the professionals on the ground? because we just have to go back to Chesterman and this whole conversation about the ivory tower and the coal face. We are talking to each other most of the time, and we are talking to the converted. How can we be creative enough to open a dialogue beyond the setting, the safe setting of academia? So this is a challenge that I'm throwing out at those in the room. There is, sorry, you had an answer for us?
Yeah, I would like to comment.
Okay. Yeah, you know that we began, my directory began to make some communication with other Unity or other interested institutions here around, but really for getting the answer of an email, it would take months.
Okay.
So I don't know. There is nothing which is mutual. The same interest is not mutual among all.
Okay. A quick answer on this topic. We can then move on. We will only have 2 more new topics on the table if possible.
Thank you very much for the panelists for the last beautiful 2 days. My name is Dr. Omar. Basically, in reference to what you've mentioned now, I had met Dr. interpreter Wāfāq from Jazira yesterday, Jazira Arabic, and I mentioned to him, I asked him, would it be possible for you to probably write a book about your experience, the practical side of interpreting, translation, all the things that the other fellow colleagues can learn from? And he said, I'm thinking about the thing, and this it fits into what you mentioned about the practical or the practitioner giving back to the, let's say, the academic, and then there should be a meeting point, not just the theory feeding into the practice, but the practice should also be feeding back. Otherwise, you can have one-way traffic, and usually there is a hinge where the practitioners don't know what's happening in the theory, or the vice versa. The academic, they don't have a lot of insight when it comes to practice. So this is just to come back to what you've raised. The second point I would like to mention is that, just a recommendation really, that an event like this should not go unnoticed, not just necessarily in specialized journals, limited within the circles of the university or colleges, but also, for example, why not have partnership with newspapers, like here or abroad, or where you can have a section within the newspaper, like you have in Arabic newspapers, maqalat or something like this. You can have something similar in translation, editorials, or a section where you give exposure to the field of translation, whether theory or practice. So small article for the people to see, so that the field is not just limited to the people who are necessarily translators or linguists, or so just a suggestion there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So back to our topic of creativity, so that we can finish off our afternoon. If you don't mind, the lady asked first.
My students, fine.
Good.
Hi everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm a linguistics and translation student, undergrad student, so I still have a long way to go. And this is why I fear kind of the AI a lot. But back to creativity, my question is about that actually. This question was raised a few times, but I don't think it was answered like clearly, or just like further clarification on creativity. How far can a translator go when it comes to creativity? And maybe in light of some theories, I don't mind, I would love that, but how far can we go, and what line can we not cross, basically, as independent translators and as non-independent translators? Thank you very much for this.
Anybody on the ground want to answer? How far? Could you repeat that beautiful question again?
Yeah, how far can a translator go with creativity, and like, what lines should they cross or not cross as independent translators and as
Somebody at the back wants to answer you. How far can the translator go? Yes, it's wonderful to have this conversation on the ground.
Mike.
The mic.
To answer your question, how far can a translator go? I think the movie we watched today, for example, gave us an example of how far and how dangerous sometimes to go beyond the source text. For example, when the translator inserted the word some, and the consequences of that intervention give us a hint and for how far we can go. It depends on the context. Depends on the context. Sometimes it's better to use functionalist approach and to be free to express the idea in your way and contextualize it. But sometimes it's very dangerous to go from the source text, to go far from the source text, because it could have very difficult consequences. Thank you.
So it is a matter of, Mona, please, thank you. Dr. Mona Baker here at the front.
I'm just going to ask you back the same question. Do you think that staying close to the source text has no consequences? Can you think about that?
What are the consequences of just repeating the source text as it is? Or is that of no concern to you, not your responsibility?
That the intelligibility of the consequence of that is that the intelligibility of the audience, the reader.
Sorry, I can't hear very well.
Because you've got.
Nobody could answer it. Should be here the last time.
The consequence of sticking to the source text is for the reader, he may not understand the text itself. Because sometimes, for example, if you stick to the form, translating a literary text, if you stick to the form, you sacrifice the intelligibility of the source text, the target text. If you stick to the form too much, you may lose the fluency and give the reader very clear text.
You're not answering my question because you are looking at the text, nothing outside the text. If the text tells you go and kill this person and you repeat that, you're happy with the consequences to repeat that?
That's not the translator.
Actually, it is one of the problems that makes a lot of translations non-creative is because of that. Because sometimes the translator cannot free himself enough.
I mean, should you be allowed to interfere with the original message? I mean, if you are hired to translate something, is it right? Is it for you to change it because it has conflict with your beliefs and feelings or whatever? I mean, you were hired to do a job. This job, regardless of, you can refuse it from the beginning. This subject is, I don't believe it. This is has a conflict with my beliefs. Sorry, I will not translate it. But if you agree to do the job, then you have to stick to it.
What
then you can say, I will judge.
What if you're an interpreter and it happens on the spot?
You should not interfere. Imagine, I mean, our doctor was working in UN. Okay, can he, because he doesn't, let's say if he's an Arab who does not like the Israeli behavior, let's say, and the Israeli person was like talking about something, conveying their messages, their government messages, can he, because he hates them, interfere with the translation and say something else? No, he cannot.
I once met a Palestinian
Maybe he should.
interpreter working for the UN, and she said that she translates Israeli visitors to the UN extremely closely because she wants the world to hear the horrors they have to say.
Exactly.
Yeah,
saying, I will not do this because this is a conflict.
But the translator can be creative at the same time stick to the meaning. He can be creative by giving a creative sentence.
I think we will probably be talking about this forever because I think we are all still stuck, or a lot of us are still stuck to the idea that if you repeat the text as it is, even in the same language actually, I never mind crossing languages, you repeat the same text as it is in another context, you've done your duty, whatever the consequences are, it's not your responsibility. And that is not true. It's simply not true. It's always your responsibility what happens next because you're always part of it. Whether you translate closely or you don't translate closely.
It's not fair.
You can't get yourself out of that equation, whatever you decide. So you just have to think about the consequences and decide on that basis.
Can I just add to Dr. Manas?
Hi, I just want to add a point to what Dr. Manas said. I think creativity is a decision. Actually, if the translator doesn't have the decision to be creative, he would not be creative. If your decision from the beginning is to stick to the source text and to just take translation as a profession or like just as a duty, not like a passion, or you don't have a spirit of wanting to add something. You want to have a contribution. You want to add to the text you are translating. So of course you will not be creative. Creativity is a decision. The first thing is a decision. You have to have this decision, and then you can of course free yourself and go beyond what you expect from yourself.
What a wonderful discussion. I agree with Mona. We will be discussing this for the days to come, the years to come. Ophidi, you had something else to add just before we end?
The importance of context in order to interpret or to really get to the actual meaning. And this meaning could be ambivalent, could be polysemic, even with an intention from the part of the source of the person who produced the text at the very beginning, and that could be culturally dependent. I remember that there's a case that has been debated in translation studies, is what happened with the bombing of Hiroshima. If it was really a translation mistake, because when there was an ultimatum to the Japanese government saying that if they didn't surrender, whole surrender in no time, then they will be bombed. And the answer on the part of the Japanese government was a very ambiguous answer, which I don't remember now in Japanese, but which was interpreted or translated literally as we don't comment or no comment on that. Now, that was understood as a position in which the Japanese government was really opposing to surrender, whereas the interpretation could be open to that as well. So it should have been better to clarify everything. But anyway, in any case, those who bombed, they had the intention of bombing in the very first place.
They would have bombed it anyway.
That would have happened, translation or without translation.
Yeah.
But in any case, the importance of context is foremost. And also, probably there isn't there also a distinction between creativity as we understand that in English, as we understand that in Arabic as bid'ah?
إبداع.
إبداع. إبداع. Yeah, but relates to bid'ah. So the root
from بدعة.
It's similar. I don't know.
كل بدعة ضلالة.
لا يا جماعة لا حرام عليكم.
I'm just joking.
Okay, I think I will need to interrupt here. Creativity has led us to this big discussion, which I think is more about ethics, responsibility, go back to the word that I think characterized this conference and creativity in itself. It's about humanity. It's about bringing the human back into center space and decisions being made on how can I serve the other through my mediation, for what purpose, and where does my conscious stand in the middle of this creative act. So on this note, let us continue this dialogue. Thank you all for being here, and I would like to call on stage my colleague, the chair, the scientific chair for this conference, Dr. Julie. Before she actually takes the floor, again, I would like to thank absolutely every one of you, my colleagues, the team, Dr. Amal, the speakers, those who spent so many hours preparing what has been a banquet for us all. So thank you, everybody, and over to you, Julie.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. It's a real pleasure to see you've stayed strong. And these 2 days have been very intense with a film screening, with panels, with seminars, workshops, of course, keynote address and plenary sessions. So it was a very rich conference. I've heard a lot of positive feedback from everybody. We also take into account all the constructive comments. Of course, we can always improve. 1 year ago, when I suggested the topic of translation and creativity, an interdisciplinary encounter, it immediately triggered a lot of interest from all the colleagues. And because we are very interpreting studies department, that was a very good sign that it would make this conference successful internationally and across disciplines. And it's a pleasure to see that it has been the case. We had very dear colleagues coming from all over HBKU, sister institution in Qatar, who are not necessarily from translation studies. We also had professionals who are not from academia, who may have studied in academic institutions, but who are now working in the industry. So this is for us a good yardstick of the success. I just would like to remind everybody that we received around 400 abstracts for this conference. So creativity really attracted a lot of people. I think also Qatar does attract a lot of people, particularly now after the big World Cup, and Qatar has been so much on the headlines. And after the pandemic as well, I think people are really eager to go back to the human and go back to being together. So we had to select 28 abstracts out of 400. You imagine not only the amount of work it means, but the difficulty of the task. And I would like to thank all the members of the committee, of the scientific committee I was chairing, Dr. Joزيليا Neves, Dr. Amr Al-Adwan, Dr. Ali Al-Mana, Dr. Rashid Yahyawi, Dr. Wissam Abdul-Jabbar, Dr. Mahmoud and Dr. Deborah, Dr. Mahmoud Al-Yathani and Dr. Deborah Giustini. Both of them actually assessed the abstracts from abroad. They were not, or they had not arrived yet. We were eagerly waiting for them, so we were also working hybrids. And of course, Khalime Al-Tawil, who has joined our department, who made a wonderful contribution. So I would like to thank all the members of the scientific committee once again. And of course, the logistical team of the Translation and Interpreting Institute. They are the ones who have made this possible. They have welcomed us. They have made sure that the AV team in QNCC would know actually what we need. They responded to emails, they dealt with the visas, and I'm sure I'm letting a very long list of tasks. Of course, the marketing, the media coverage, etc., etc. And I will name them and invite them to the stage. So Amin and Riman, Mirna and Sarah, Sabina and Jamila, Aitham and Amar, and Jihad, Rocky, and Charlene. Of course, here, under the light. So you see, it's quite a big team, because we are a lot of people, and we are very demanding. We want a lot of things, right? So we really needed them to make our stay and our experience in the conference comfortable. The stage is yours now. All the light is on you. Yes, and finally, I would like to call a person who I would say is a hybrid between the two committees, between the scientific committee and the organizational committee. Someone without whom I think the house would not hold together. If you remove her, I think we would all stumble. I would like to call on stage Fatima. Thank you. Yes. Yes, so we'll take a photo of the team. Yes. Dr. Amal, invite you on stage as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone. And can we have a photo together? Thank you so much. Thank you. And we end? Yes? Yes?
Let's end together.
Let's end together. So what do we want to say? As usual, we'll be sending you emails asking you for feedback. This is our 12th conference, but as you know, this is the first one after the pandemic. So I wish, and I really, really hope that this was beneficial to all of you. If there were bits and pieces that didn't work well, اسمحوا لنا, اعذرونا. Next time it's going to be stronger. What we've done is we alternate now because of the other department we've got in the college, the Middle Eastern Studies Department. Next year we'll hold the Middle Eastern Studies Conference. Okay, and remember, there's always a language and a cultural element in it. So you can also apply to that one. So we might see you next year. And then we'll hold the 13th translation conference in 2025, if I'm not mistaken. 2025. Yeah. So we might see you next year. Thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate it. You made those 2 days magnificent, and we have amazing memories that will last for a very long time.
Yes, thank you so much.
We'll be seeing you all today, right? This evening for dinner at 7 o'clock in Chef's Garden.
Because we haven't eaten enough, that's for sure, right? This is going to be the feedback that we haven't eaten enough and we were too warm. These are the two keys. Okay, thank you so much and see you at dinner tonight.